Welcome to Wizard Team, a Black magical podcast for Black magical stories.
Hi everyone, it's Bayana and Robyn embarking on a journey through the many fantasy stories written by and about Black people. Today we're reading chapters 31 through 33 of Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn.
But first, previously on Wizard Team, Bree finally gets a chance to heal, process, and clean off the last week, which also ensues in a mini meltdown. When she's done, Cell comes searching for the first aid kit. Things get tense between them as they discuss whether Cell is succumbing to his blood, Nick's faith in Cell, and Bree's general recklessness. Later, Bree asks her ancestors for help controlling her root. And then after a pep talk from her dad, she decides it's time for a training montage. But her friends say, skirt. No, actually, we're going to go on the run. Feeling betrayed and also angry at Cell for, she assumes, going off to save Nick without her, Bree gets ready to go on the run. But it turns out Cell is coming with her and they make up, sort of, for now. Because they can never really...
He told her they're always gonna be. He thinks they always gonna be fighting. Can I also shout out to Bayana, who if you're not following us on Instagram, what is wrong with you? We tell you every episode to follow us. The Not on My Watch with Iyanla for that chef's kiss. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anytime we can pull out
I was trying to find a different GIF. And then I saw
perfection is reached. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I tried to find a different GIF. Well, there was a different GIF in my head that wasn't Iyanla, and I couldn't find it for some reason. And then the Iyanla one kept popping up, and I was like, no, this actually works better than the one that I thought I was going to use. So I was like, let's do it.
Yeah, I just think.
Yeah, she said no.
Sometimes the internet, the world and the internet meet in a perfection that is just, it can't be denied. And Iyanla Fix My Life was one of those, where it was like, this show is made so that the internet can have GIFs and memes to sustain us into perpetuity, you know? That's why this is here. This is the gift that keeps on giving. This is the gift that keeps on gifting. Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
Good job.
Chapter 31. So they gotta go on the run, right? That's fine. But where do they go? Well, Bree tells them about the paper that Samira slipped her. And so they decide to go to the place that was written on there, which is Talbot and Longfellow, to find Lucille. I love these because it's kind of a dead drop. You know how I feel about a dead drop. But it's also very much spy info. Samira gave her the bare minimum. There's 3 words on that paper: Talbot and Longfellow, find Lucille. That's it. That's what they got. So
that's how you keep people. That's how you keep security.
Exactly, because they just got into a skirmish with Jonas. Say that paper fell out of Bree's hands. If a stranger picks it up, that means nothing to them. They're gonna throw it away because they're like, this is nonsense. But it means something to Bree, who is the only person it needs to mean something to. So they also, one of the things I really love about contemporary fantasy in general is times like this where they're looking at Bree what is this? And then put it in Google. Let's try our best. You know what I mean? And that doesn't exist in Game of Thrones, right?
Right.
They just be wandering the moors and the hills and the dales, hoping that they stumble upon something.
And then on top of that, you think timing too. I think when they Google it, they realize that they find out it's only 3 hours away, and that. It's funny because I think about maybe it's something a conversation I see on social media, and I feel also just in general, people talk about California versus the East Coast, and how what you can in California, you just drive 3 hours and you're still in California.
Yeah.
So they do end up going to a different state, but, like, 3 hours is not a big deal for a drive, and it's not like, "Oh, we have to walk over all these, like, hills and mountains, and when we get there, is this person even gonna be there anymore?" Or, like, "It's gonna take months," or whatever. It's like, "No,
Right.
we can just it's a road trip,"
And it
you know?
allows them to kind of also, just plot out what they need, right? So this address is in Clayton, Georgia. It's not an address, actually. It's just an intersection in Clayton, Georgia. And like you said, it's a 3-hour drive. So
Oh,
they're
also
like, okay,
too sorry, real quick.
go ahead.
It's a crossroads,
I
which I
know.
think is important in the sense of, like,
A crossroads in Georgia is
yeah, and
important.
it's just like I think it's what is it? It's Alice says that she's like, "Oh, it's just a crossroads," and then like Cell kind of makes eye contact with Bree, and like he's obviously irritated because there's not a lot of information, but I think he also clocks that too. Like there is some significance to that, and like
Yeah.
um yeah, so it's not
Um,
just like it's not it's deserted, but it's also that's an important yes, Amani, meet me at the crossroads.
I was thinking of
Portia's
the
not here to
devil went,
sing.
and I was thinking of the devil went down to Georgia, which is,
Mhm.
I think, what this was actually trying to convey too, which is like at this crossroads in Georgia, the devil tries to get this young man's soul. Um, it's a it's a country western song. I think
Mhm.
Charlie
And then
Daniels. Yeah, yeah. I just
and then
googled it. Charlie
also,
Daniels song.
we're gonna meet, we're gonna meet Valak here, which I'm so excited
I
about, but,
know.
he's he is who, it's the first time Bree hears when she goes in that memory walk with Patricia, it's the first time Bree hears a Cambion being referred to as a Crossroads child, so
Yeah,
it's also kind of a, like, hint that that's, like, we're gonna, not, like,
this
meet
is where we're
him
at.
or, like, meet a Cambion.
But we're about to meet the Crossroads child,
Yes,
which we don't know
exactly.
yet. But
But we know because this is a spoiler-heavy
spoiler
podcast.
heavy podcast, like the Crossroads child that Bree saw in the vision is Valak, and
Mhm.
Valak is my fave. Me and Cambions go together. I guess we love a dramatic thing.
He's really my
I
favorite.
was
It's
about to
funny
be
because
like, you know what,
when I read
Rob
it the
from
first
Love
time,
Island
I was like,
USA.
"Is" yeah, when I read it the first time, I was like, "I really like Valak," but I don't know if that's just, like then, you get time between reading a book and you're like, "I don't know if that was just me in the time in the moment," and then when I reread the book, I was like, "No, Valak's my favorite," and then reading this chapter when he shows up, I'm like, "No, I just love him. He's the
I
best."
love
Like,
him. I love him, and it's like
he's just
he's definitely one of those characters where he could not be. I mean, I would read the fuck out of a Valak centered story. Um,
Mhm.
but in terms of like this and where we are in this story, he could not be like the focal point of Bloodmarked. He has to be kind of a secondary character. But the ways in which he fills in those moments,
Mhm.
um, you just have to kind of love him. Like I don't know, the best way to think about it is like when you watch movies and there's like the character that's just there for like oh, what's his name? Jim from The Office. I can't remember his name right now.
Oh,
But Jim from The Office.
yeah,
Uh
James Halpert. No, James
Krasinski or
Halpert,
something
that's
like that.
literally Jim. John Krasinski.
John Krasinski. Okay, so he in The Office, but as well he's in this movie with Meryl Streep and what's it called? I don't know. It's like this romantic comedy with like uh elder elder people is wrong, but like middle-aged people. It's complicated.
Mm,
That's the name of it. Right. Thank you.
mhm.
He plays this like the boyfriend of a daughter or whatever. He literally has like 5 lines in the movie. I don't know, but his whole job is like reactions and like funny one-liners, and he is the
Mhm.
best thing in that movie because like right when you need that snappy one-liner to like release the tension, or you need someone to call a thing beloved, like, and get away with it, like that's what he is in that movie, and that's what Valak is in this story to me. Like you just like someone who is gonna just like say the thing and stare you down like what was I not supposed to say the thing?
Right.
Give you like all sorts of information, but do it in a way where you're like, it like releases the tension, but also just
But also kind of
that,
escalates it at the same time because
yeah, like
he's
he moves things along in a way that is just perfect.
yeah.
And he's funny and he's sweet and he's like not sweet. He's everything you need him to be when you need him to
We
be it.
should keep going
Move
because we
along,
haven't
but
even met him.
yes,
We just had to
true. Okay.
wax poetic about Valak real quick before we even get to the chapter that he's in.
Right. Okay.
Very
So
right. Very true.
it's a 3-hour drive to get to this intersection to find Lucille, which sounds like the name of oh no, that's the name of BB King's guitar. It's like Lucille sounds like the name of an inanimate object. It's because BB King's guitar. Anyway,
Mhm.
so they stop to get gas and use the bathroom at this 2-pump station in the middle of nowhere. And as someone who went on a road trip, a solo dolo road trip, and has stopped at a 2-pump gas station in the middle of nowhere with a level of melanin that is not found prevalently in that middle of nowhere, you in danger, girls. Like immediately.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because of the like situations that they're in, and that they're so kind of understandably so, they're so just like clouded with worry and stuff about the order. It's not until they walk in to this gas station to use the bathroom that Alice and Bree are like, uh-oh.
Mhm.
And Bree clocks like William belongs here. William is good anywhere, right?
Mhm.
Well, in the middle of nowhere, Georgia. In this middle of nowhere, Georgia. Because there are also places in the middle of nowhere, Georgia, where like William would stand out.
Yeah.
But where they are right now, it's these 2 white men. Bree says they look like they're most likely brothers. And William goes to pay for the gas with cash. They don't want to be followed. And use the bathroom. Alice and Bree are like, okay, well, we'll just look for snacks while you use the bathroom. 2 things. One thing, I don't go up for like chauvinism and like, what is that called? Like when, like men are supposed to hold the door open for you. And
Uh-huh.
like my dad always walks on the outside of the
Chivalry.
street. Chivalry, thank you. I was like chauvinism, chivalry, same thing. Same thing, different fonts. But the chivalrous thing to do, William, would have been to let Alice or Bree use the bathroom first. And then we could have
Yeah.
like not had this whole thing. But William goes to the bathroom. They are looking for snacks, and Bree is uncomfortable and notices like they're being watched, right?
And she also
So they're
like
just
she clocks it even before that. Like she says we're gonna get
yeah,
snacks, but she says it loudly to make sure that they like hear. You know what I
they
mean? It's like
know, yeah,
and it's interesting in the sense that like or not interesting, but like William there's like an immediate tension when they walk into the spot, and William is like the only one who doesn't really seem to clock it. Um but it's there and it's like there from jump. And I really love how like I mean like this scene is, it's not a fun
great.
scene, but I appreciate that the like weight that Tracy puts on it in that way. Like that tension is built immediately. And if you know, you know. Like I don't obviously as a Black person, I was immediately like, oh, okay, yeah, this is about to be a racist interaction. I don't know if anyone else because it reads similar to if they were like about to be fighting demons. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's the same level of tension for something that is compared to a lot of the other things that we're dealing with very mundane. Um
and I also love that because it's also the reason why William, and I love and hate that William just cannot. It's because it's very realistic that William just he knows but he does not know, and he cannot hold on to the fact that like he is walking around in a different world than Bree and Alice are, and has different like has blinders on, basically,
Mhm.
because you do get that sense of tension. And this whole time you've been like, when it's tense, you're like, are there demons? Like, who's the big bad, right? And then to have William, who would normally like clock like there's a demon, there's a shadow born afoot, right? Being like oblivious, you're kind of like, okay, well, what, as like a reader, you're like, okay, I know what this is. Bree knows what this is. Alice knows what this is, but William doesn't. And I wonder, again, as like a Black reader, I knew, right? I wonder what like
Right.
a white reader is reading into this, right? Are they reading the tension at all? Are they reading the tension as like, are these brothers demons? Or are they
Right.
reading the tension as what it is? You know what I mean?
And, like, when they clock it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Because it
and I
takes
think that it's
William a
pretty, like
while.
I think it's pretty I think Tracy doesn't, like, draw it out in a way that makes you think that it might be, you know what I mean? Like, Bree
Yeah,
kinda says from jump, like, I'm we're not really welcome here. They're looking at us. I'm about to say this. I'm about to let them know out loud that we're looking for snacks. You know what I mean? I feel like, but
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. But there's like a
So
sense
it's
of,
a
so like
yeah.
Monty says too, it's like that Doctor Who episode, which is hilarious because like which Doctor, there's been a few at this point. But that Doctor Who episode where we
I know
clocked
which one.
immediately, but other folks um can just think it's a fun demon free romp, like can just
It's
not clock.
he's talking about Dot and Bubble from the most recent.
From the most
Uh
recent, that's what I figured what he was talking about, but
yeah,
I was also thinking about the
family one
yeah,
when what's his name?
just left Martha. Anyway, so they're like William comes out of the bathroom and goes to give the key to one of the girls, but one of the brothers snatches it back and is like, the toilet's out of order. And William's like, what you mean? It was working fine. And then Cell comes in like, is there a problem? One of the other brothers comments on Cell's eyes, calling him a goth kid. And then Bree goes to stick up for Cell, but like Bree was also like, we shouldn't be like, it's okay, it's fine. We don't want no problems, right?
Yeah, I feel like Bree Bree is so it's very interesting because it's consistent. Bree is
Yes.
really protective of Sal, and especially his like anytime anyone comments on his looks, she gets like highly offended.
And it
Um,
happens like twice in this number of chapters too, where it's like you also like she knows that they're trying to fly under the radar, right? And she's like telling
mhm,
William like it's fine, like let's just I'm
let's
thinking
go.
let's keep driving, we'll go pee in the bushes, like let's
Right.
just
They're
not,
they're
because
both like, "This is not a battle that we need to fight
we
here." That's like literally what she says.
yeah,
She's like, "This is not."
it's not
Which
the
makes sense.
time,
Like
it's
you're
not
on the run. You're not
yeah.
trying to call attention to yourselves. You're not trying to like,
And
yeah.
she's very cognizant of it. And then the guy says, "What's up with your eyes to sell?" And she's like, "Wait, what did you say?" And it's like, remember
She's like,
point
"Hold
2
up."
seconds ago when you were explaining to Will that it's not the time? It's still
Yeah, and she
not
said,
the
"Look,
time.
what you're not gonna do is make fun of Sel, okay? You're not gonna
Make fun of
comment on
Sal,
his looks."
which is so funny. So then
Mhm.
um Cell stopping her, because Cell comes in to not really diffuse the situation, but to end it. Because he's like,
Yeah.
he can hear all this from where he was. He knew that like, the tensions are ratcheting up. He came in to make sure that they weren't going to do anything without him being in the room, but also to like get his people and to gather and go. So Cell
Mhm.
stops Bree as well, and it's like, now is not the time. They look at Will, and Will is like seething and like is pulling kind of a Cell where he's got like the Arthur gif of the bald fist by his hands, calling Ether to him. Like even Alice notices that like
Just the
William
stance.
is no longer here. Like William has
Mhm.
left the building and the sign of Gawain has clocked in. And like coming from him just having to, torture Kizia and just be very battle focused in a way that made everyone uncomfortable because William is not that person. Like it
Mm-hmm.
just felt, it still is like really, really sad to me. Like reading this part where he doesn't even notice that he's about, like, the description of William is the most Selwyn description.
Yeah.
And it's so sad, like it's heartbreaking because I can't think of two more different, like, personalities. You know what I mean? So to
Mm-hmm.
like have to illustrate that Will has been brought to this point, it's just so like, poor
Yeah,
baby.
I'm also curious though, because like I don't know. I've never really I still have not really fully like figured out how I feel about this, like his reaction, I guess.
Hmm.
Um in the sense of he's rightfully angry or whatever. But I'm like, how did he get to the point where he is so, and like I do think it has something to do with like the interaction with Kizia and everything, but it's like it's such like well meaning, like ally type situation where you're like he's putting Bree and Alice in more danger
Danger. Yeah.
by not
And
following their lead. And like
it comes from a place of disappointment in himself that he did not clock what was happening.
mhm.
Like he's like, well, why can't they use it? What's wrong with the bathroom? Oh, and then feels
Like
like
an
he needs to double
overcompensation maybe, I
down.
don't know.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Like feels like he needs to double down because he was so blinded by what was going on when they immediately clocked it. And probably in the back of his head, he's like, oh, they did seem tense. And I attributed that tenseness to just the world. And it's actually like what's actually going on. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
When you like start to look back at what was going on and then catch everything that you skated over or like dismissed. And so then you feel
Yeah.
the need to like overcompensate
Do the
because
most, but it's
you,
just like it's not, yeah, this it's so like I think it definitely still, like you were saying, like it definitely has to do with Gawain or whatever his like kind of he's definitely not all the way himself, I would say. Like he's still dealing with that like guilt and trying to figure out like who he is, and there's still a lot of anger there. So I think it definitely was like him drawing on that, but it was also one of those things where it's like, bro, this is not the time. Like actually read the room for real. Like don't read it all the way. Like this is not really about you. And it kind of feels like he makes it about him a little.
yeah. And I
Um
think what I was saying too about like the Gawain part is just that his emotions are so fragile and frail that like, not that normally Will wouldn't overcompensate, but he just wouldn't overcompensate in this way. Like I feel like
mhm,
Will, further removed from what happened with Kizia and Jonas, would have overcompensated by like lecturing them.
right.
But this Will is like, oh no, I'm just going to have to fight, and
Mhm.
or not even fight. I'm just going to have to harm. um,
Yeah. And I will say
so
like I do appreciate Tracy doesn't really let her white characters off the hook in
no,
these ways, you know what I mean? Like she's not like, "Oh yeah, William has no flaws and can, is not racist and never like has these moments." You know what I mean? Or like
yeah,
he was sticking up for Tor still, like, you know what I mean? Like a few chapters ago, like, "Oh, she's not really racist." And it's like, "Bro, she
be
is."
for
You know
real.
what I mean? So like I think Tracy does do a good job of like showing that kind of like, it's like, yeah, William is a safe place or safe person for Bree, but at the same time, he still has his own kind of like limitations and things that he needs to unlearn. And so there are moments where even if he means well, it doesn't mean he's necessarily going to do well.
Yeah, exactly.
And like honestly, we're about to see Cell be very similar. Like
Whew,
honestly. So
whew.
there, I think these 3 chapters are just like y'all are the homies.
These 3
but
chapters are when you're like, okay, yeah, they're medulla
it's just
oblongata.
extremely white. It's just like
They're older than Bree and Alice, but like, yeah, their brain has definitely not fully developed. We are not thinking all the way
we're
through,
not
you
thinking, but
know?
also it's a very like it's just well, we'll get there. We'll get to it, but it's just
So,
these moments of just like, yeah, this is not how
yeah,
this isn't gonna
this is
work.
not how this is supposed to go. So Cell ends up like dragging Will out of the store, and like Will lets himself be dragged, right? They
Hmm.
get back in the car, and Cell tells him that those guys had a gun and that they can't afford to make a scene. And I feel like Cell is like saying this not only to William, Alice, and Bree, because Alice and Bree were like, no shit, Shirley. You know, like, I mean, they didn't know that they had a gun, but like, I think he's like saying it out loud to like to himself as much as to Will, right?
Hmm.
Like, we have to keep our wits about us. Like, we have to. The last thing we need is for there to be some cause for the cops to come or anything that tips
Hmm.
off the regents and the order to where we are.
Exactly.
So, um, Alice though is still mad, and she's now feeling in a like they're in the car again. They're moving away from the gas station. She's also feeling safe enough to express her frustration and madness about it, which
Hmm.
I think is like one of the things I really love about like what you talk about how these books are so like cinematic and like you can like visual. It's like I know for a fact that like the moment I'm out of a racially uncomfortable situation slash racial like dangerous situation, the first thing I want to do is spew and talk mad shit because you
Hmm.
feel so like your brain is like you're fighting yourself to be quiet because you know that like it's just not worth like you know like the physical safety aspect. So the moment that you
Hmm.
feel physically safe, all of the comebacks, all of the shit that you've had to swallow just come
Hmm.
spewing out of you in a release. And Alice is like, these are the motherfuckers y'all be saving. Like,
That part.
these are the ones born. This is what we're trying to save, you know? And says, like, outright, like, if the, like, she's like, I know I'm not Legendborn. I'm not really in the order. But if the Shadowborn were coming for either one of those assholes, I might have to look the other way. And
And you know,
Bree is like, it says something that no one they just let that sentiment sit. They're like,
hmm
you know?
and I think that that's like well, I think it's really interesting where it's placed. Like it's placed right before we go into this into like to this spot and before we meet Valak and like see, just more like it complicates what we've been taught about demons and like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, rogue ether users or whatever, rogue in quotes, because that's what the order calls them. But um I think obviously Bree has dealt with racism within the order,
Yeah.
but it's still kind of always been uh positioned as like the order versus the demons, right? And the orders protect the once born. But then you got to remember like the once born include racists and like terrible people, right? And it's like and I don't think I think that Tracy's like, yeah, fuck them. You know what I mean? She's not saying
You
like, oh,
know?
but like, do you save them? It's just like, no, like it's more complicated on both sides. It's not good versus evil or like, you know what I mean? Like,
Or the fact that you're
humans are
not a
not
demon does not make
inherently,
you good. Right.
yeah, it's like you're not inherently good because you're human. And we've seen a lot of that even just within the order, obviously, but like then we're gonna go to the demon side or demon side sort of, but more like, non-order ether users and see like it's more complicated there too. It's not just like this cut and dry thing that we've kind of been taught to believe. Or at the very least, we've seen Bree kind of be pulled into and seeing like the kids who grew up in the order be taught. So yeah, in terms of just like placement of that scene, I think was also really smart.
Yeah. And I do also like the fact that it really does give that sense of, and like the differences um of being on the run. And like I talked about when we were talking about Nick and his father being on the run, kind of how they're staying in hotels and
Mhm.
like it's not comfortable, but it's not like there's a level of privilege and access that they still have
Mhm.
um that others don't. And this is kind of like one of those things where it's like they're traveling the backwoods of Georgia in this hodgepodge group of, like white boy who's good anywhere, Bree and Alice who are obviously minorities, people of color. And I think it's also like really interesting from like Alice, like the Alice Chin's perspective of being Asian in a place where you think about race historic, like, in the South, where it's like historically when you think about like race and race relations, it's always kind of like white versus black.
Mhm.
Um, and then this sense of like she is not welcome either, um, and has this like foreignness to her as well, where it's like at least Bree is a "you're not welcome here" that they know and recognize kind of thing. Um, I don't know how I'm not. I don't think I'm explaining this correctly or verbalizing this correctly because it's a very hard thing to verbalize because I don't believe it's all stupid to me. But there is this like layering of racism
Just
and like
different forms of
xenophobia.
racism and
Yeah, yeah.
mhm.
I think even brings even more attention to like their group, like
Mhm.
plus whatever Cell got going on, right? Like we just also
Right.
have to mention, like those things, the way that those guys made sense of it was like, oh, he's in his goth phase or whatever. But like
Mhm.
Cell is visibly something else too, right? Um, and so there's this like level of danger and flying under the radar that is even harder for them.
Mhm.
So they end up making their way to the Crossroads Lounge. And Cell is saying, like, do not mention, like, he's looking around, they see like the skull on the above the door frame or whatever, and Will is like, oh, it looks like a dragon. And then Bree's like, dragons aren't real, are they real? And he's like, they used to hang out in Wales, so they were at one point. And then Cell's making this point, like, let's not mention the words the order, Pendragon, let's not say anything that shows what we are affiliated with.
Mhm.
Because we are in a place where like that is like we are clearly in a place of magic, but not, I'm using air quotes here, sanctioned,
Mhm.
magic. They call it like a rogue den. And then as they're like kind of, I can't tell, I have to go back. I want to say that they're by the car. They're not in the car, but they're by the car because otherwise they're just having this conversation right in front of the door, which was
No,
bothering me
they're
the whole
like
time I was
walking
reading
up
it.
because
They had to park far
they had to
away. So
park
they're
kind of far
okay. So
away,
they're
so
on the
they're
move. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Because I was like, this is bothering me that they're just like standing in front of this door talking about what they will and will not say. So they're walking while it's a walk and talk.
Yeah.
As they're walking, Selden like doubles over in pain. And Will is like, I recognize this. Nick is in danger, but alive. And Bree immediately um, pulls out, like, nicks herself so that she can blood walk and call to Arthur. Arthur is like, I am not a pet on a leash, and then like pushes Bree out or refuses to be called. Um,
Which
and
I don't care. No right. He gets no rights.
right, this was
Like
like,
that
but this was
is
what
you
we
should
agreed
have.
upon. You know,
It's
you
like let
said
her.
summon
But
me.
also,
I'm summoning you.
I will say though, Bree didn't think it all the way through.
She really didn't.
Because
This is the
if
only time
she
when I'm like,
calls if she goes to call Nick, doesn't he have to be asleep? Or if he's not asleep, wouldn't she be putting him to sleep? And if he's in danger, you're knocking him out to come talk to him and see what's wrong. Doesn't really feel like the
this was the
right move.
question that this is the question that I had in general and about like the calling Nick, and if it only works if they're both asleep, or could he be,
I
because
mean,
what
she's not
Cell says,
asleep, so I assume that
right,
she's
what
just
Cell
cold,
says
you
is
know?
what I think happens anyway. It's like when she's on these blood walks, she is like just still, she's
Yeah.
not there. Like she's just like, when you're daydreaming and someone's like, hello, hello, and you're like snap
Mhm.
out of it. It That's what I feel like is happening. Like she's just kind of like
Mhm.
standing there, and like if you're walking past, you're like, oh, that girl is on
Completely
one, just like
zoned out.
zoned out, right? Um, I think that that's what happens to Nick as well. But like you said, like if he's in danger, zoning out is not the thing that you want to
Yeah.
happen right now. But also, they're in the middle of nowhere. So for
Mhm.
Bree to zone out is not a thing that they want to happen right now, which is why Cell says, do not try to call him again, when she's like, oh, he won't let me try again. And he's like, no, because it
He's
leaves
like,
you
"No,
vulnerable.
dude."
We can't take that risk. I have this like alarm clock in my head. Like I know, like I can feel that he was in danger. It's subsiding now. So he's obviously like the danger is passing or he's getting away. But
And then
like,
it's also like, what can you do? Even okay, let's just say
yeah,
you call him, you see he's able to tell you where he's at. He's not compromised by zoning out in the middle of an escape or whatever.
we've already
Um,
decided that we're not going after him right now.
and you can't get to him before like he's gonna have to
The,
fend for
the
himself
danger.
regardless. You're not like
Yeah.
it's not like y'all are up the street.
He's gonna be like, oh, funnily enough, I'm in Clayton, Georgia.
Right.
You know? Because
Right.
if he was, Cell would know that. Cell would be
Yeah.
like, oh, hold up. My boy is like around the corner. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, and so
So
that's kind of
it's
also
just
like what Cell is saying is like, I will know. We will know, but we've made this decision. And so like
mhm.
we're sticking to this decision.
And I will say I get it, like, Bree panics, like, it's not like she was really using all of her brain when she
Yeah.
just pulled out that safety pin, like, she definitely was just like, "This is what I can do," type thing, and, she didn't I'm sure if she had taken a second to think about it, she would have been like, "Oh, no, that doesn't make sense," but she's
Or at
panicked.
least like, let's go find a
She
bathroom, or you know what I mean? Like, let's
Yeah,
not do this out in the middle of the street. Like she
yeah,
definitely
but,
panicked and
like,
didn't think this through. But like,
she's panicked, she's like, not only is Nick in danger, but she can see that Cell's in pain, and so both of those things at once is,
yeah,
scary. So give her a little slack, but also it just did not she wasn't thinking.
no. Um, so then he's like, he makes Bree swear to run and leave if told so, and then she reluctantly swears it. She's like, the panic is subsiding, and she's like, okay, yes, we did go through all of this already. I know all of the reasons why I should not have done that. I know all the reasons why we're not going after Nick. Like, nothing has changed since the last time we had this
Mhm.
conversation. So she begrudgingly is like, yes, if you tell me to run and leave, I'll run and leave. Sal's like looking around, and he's like, we shouldn't, like, he's like smelling the magic, Bree smelling the magic and stuff, and it's like, it's not Legend-born order magic, but it's not Rootcraft either. It's something else. Something
Mhm.
else is going on here. So Cell wants to leave, or at the very least, make Bree and Alice wait in the car with, and either Cell or William would go in and try to like find Lucille. And Bree's like, that's not gonna work. William is like, if we behave, we can leave just with the information that we need. Um, and then like the security guy just pops up and appears in front of them as like asking for ID. So they don't even have like, they don't really come to an agreement so much as like, Lewis, the security man, is like, let me see some ID.
Mm-hmm.
Bree is thinking like, okay, Cell and William can possibly pass for 21. Me and Allison's fake IDs just say that we're 18, and even that's a stretch, right?
Mm-hmm.
But she figures out that like Lewis is actually asking for a member ID because like the Crossroads Lounge is a membership kind of club, and if they're going to be there as guests, he needs to stamp their wrist. And then they agree to this waiver, which is basically like you enter at your own risk. The Crossroads Lounge isn't liable to any like harm that you come to, but you also agree to not start no stuff, won't be no stuff, kind of, basically, is what the waiver and agreement says. And then he asks if they have any magic to declare, and they're all like, no. Okay.
Liars.
But he lets them in. There's a sudden popping sound. He disappears, and Sal's like, that's not his magic. Because Alice is like, is he that fast? Like, what happened? And he's like, no. And that's not his magic. Someone is helping him appear and disappear like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so then Bree's like, all right, well, let's just find Lucille and get out of here.
I do want to... Yeah, before that too, though, this is just my... I mean, there are so many reasons why Cell is benched for me. Spoiler alert. However, there's a moment, so they get these stamps on their hands, and they're like kind of like an ether stamp. Mm-hmm. And Cell immediately, what does he say? He's like, I think the fuck not, or something like that. But he's like very like, he's immediately, he's all of his prejudice just jumps out in that moment. And then like as we continue on, it just like keeps growing. And it's one of those things where it's like, dude, I get you're salty. Obviously he's shaken by what just happened with Nick and not really being able to do anything about that. But then he's just like, he is just completely on one for the rest of the time.
I need to say, I tried so hard to not bitch him. I really was like, there's got to be someone else. There isn't.
No,
there's not. There isn't. There's not. No. And I think one of the things that makes it so tough too is because Cell is the one that's like, we can't make a scene. Cell is the one that's like, it's dangerous here. We're already vulnerable. We can't take risk. And then immediately popping off at Lewis. Like, Lewis just asked for your wrist to give you a stamp. He's just doing his job. He's the doorman. He's the bouncer.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fuck not. Like, man.
Sir, we have to go in here. Like, these are the rules of the thing. And that's the thing. Like, you also, it's like his prejudice of just like, it's at every turn here. And again, I don't want to like fully go in because it's gonna become, it hasn't fully happened yet. It's starting. But like, it's again where you see that like he has these like prejudices, these things that have been taught to him from the order, right? And like, he is not interrogating it.
It's also really funny because I'll wait until we get there.
Okay. Let's just get into
let's just dive in. Let's dive in.
Yeah.
We're so close to Valak.
Literally. all of it is happening. Wizard Team is part of the Black Nerds Create Collective, which provides content through the lens of critical and creative fandom. In B&C's Discord, you can not only find a channel dedicated to all things Wizard Team, but spaces to connect with other fellow nerds about stories across media, genre, and more. Join a group read, find book recommendations, and maybe even get the juice to write your own story. Just go to bnc-community.com to join.
Llévate más de lo que esperas todos los días con el nuevo McValue en McDonald's. Ahora puedes comprar uno y sumarle otro por $1. Así que cuando tu equipo favorito enfrente a sus rivales, enfrenta tus antojos con $5 Meal Deals. Y si estás corriendo para alcanzar el desayuno, corre al app para llevarte ofertas antes del cutoff. Tú decides, y con McValue, tu decisión siempre rinde más. Precios y participación pueden variar. BOGO $1 válido para un producto de igual o menor valor. Debe estar registrado en Rewards para ofertas en el app.
Are you loving our commentary on Black fantasy stories and want to hear thoughts on more classic tales? Tolkien Black Folks is a hashtag and podcast where you can find all kinds of Black nerdy discussions about Middle-earth. Check out previous episodes on the BNC Presents podcast feed, and if you're a Black Tolkien fan, make sure to use the hashtag during Season 2 of The Rings of Power. So we they step into the Crossroads Lounge, which is what it's called. And so Bree is kind of describing it. She's saying like it could be a once-born bar, except for the way space is kind of like, or like the shadows in the corners are kind of distorted, so you can't really tell where like how big it is, where it ends. There's like this bar, and then there's like these what is it called, like truck containers. There's a different word for that.
Shipping containers.
Like shipping containers. Yeah. So like these shipping containers, and there's like 3 of them. There's doorways, and you kind of can choose one to go through or whatever. But then on top of that, there's like all the corners are really shadowy, so you can't tell if like that's the wall or if it goes on farther than that.
And they're shimmering too, so there's obviously some, or like Bree can tell that there's some kind of magic or glamour or something happening, because when she tries to really focus in on like the corners, they blur.
Which I think is dope. So it's like again, it's like we're seeing new ways to use ether. In this case, it's like manipulating space, and like that's just freaking dope. And that's the other thing. Like I'm very excited for the other 2 books in this series, obviously for the plot and for like to see what's going to happen, but also the world building, and like because I love the way that Bloodmarked really like expands and also complicates the world of like this world, and especially how ether works and like who uses it. So this is just like this is one of my oh sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I also really love the idea of like so this is like it's just a bar hangout where people can go who are like a part of this world, right? But there's also like deals and things being made, and like you can see this with the way like the waiver and the agreement that they have to make as like guests to come in, and the fact that there's like a member, right? Like you could become a member of the Crossroads Lounge or whatever. Like there's a member ID and stuff. So I love the idea of like having this as like a defense mechanism too, of like keeping everyone uncomfortable, and like you would assume that only Valak, who like owns the place, or maybe some of his workers, really understand the layout of the place, and then they can hide in those corners, or like no, you know what I mean? So I just love it from a sense of like when we think about like the Legendborn and stuff, like calling ether and then like making these like forging these weapons and stuff out of the ether. But then it's also very easy to like take that away, right? You cuff Cell, and now he can't call ether. But if you ether the surroundings that you're in, you know what I mean? It's just like it's a whole different kind of like defense. So it's cool.
Yeah, it's all really dope. And also again, like I will say, like I didn't realize, because you don't really pay attention to like what chapter things are in when you're just reading it naturally or whatever. But I always get to this point in Bloodmarked, like the first half of it, I guess, is just like it infuriates me. It's so like angering, and then I get to like most of this last half, and I just really love it just for the ways that it increases, like it changes the like world building, or just expands the world building. But then also like we get more people of color, so they're walking through this bar, and all of the patrons are Black and brown. So Cell talking about, oh, we'll just go in and blend in, like you would 100% stand out walking up in here by yourself. This is not like your space.
Yeah. I also love too, like you're talking about like when you're reading it and stuff, when I think about Legendborn, and I think I've said this before, like the minute when I knew that like Legendborn was a book that I loved, you know, when you're like I'm enjoying this or whatever, but you don't know, like, but there's a moment for me at least, like when I'm reading something where I'm like, oh, this is going to be like a favorite. If it can land the plane, I am coming back for another ride, right? To me, that
Mm-hmm.
moment in Legendborn was the memory walk, where I was like, oh, we're on some other shit. Like this, I'm bought in completely. This is that moment in Bloodmarked for me where I was like, oh,
Yeah.
and I guess it is always when Tracy's like, there's more to this world. There's even more. There's, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
so,
Agreed. I mean,
yeah.
I think that was and I don't remember I think we talked about it like kind of briefly when we were reading Legendborn. I know it's something we've talked about offline for sure, about really liking Legendborn and also wanting more of like more of the root workers, wanting more of like a black presence in the book outside of just Bree, and like understanding why Legendborn is the way that it is, especially when we were reading for Wizard Team, because it was like, oh no, this is happening over the course of like 2 weeks, so there's no time for
Yeah.
really like any of this other shit, because this shit is happening like it's back to back to back. Ain't nobody getting no type of rest. There's no time for barely any time for class, like, and
Yeah. We are
so.
not leaving
But I
campus.
remember
This
like
is it.
when I read Legendborn before Bloodmark came out, being like, I'm in it enough to want to like I'm in it enough to want to see where it goes and to see how it expands, but Bloodmark will let me know if this is like a series that I'm really gonna love.
Yeah.
And it definitely, like, as soon as we like from here on, I was like, yeah, no. And I love Legendborn for a lot of other reasons. Again, like even the first half and how like infuriating it is, I think is like really well done. Um, but again, yeah, once we get here, it's like this is what I wanted in Legendborn, but also understand why we couldn't get it yet. Um,
Yeah.
and now we're getting it, and this is like, yep, exactly. This is why this is my shit. Like
Yeah.
it just is like,
And then it
yeah.
just reaffirms to you how brilliant Tracy is, because like, you can't just give everybody what they want right when they want it. Like the way in which she paces this stuff is like just brilliant.
Hmm. So the patrons again are all black and brown. So it's interesting because Bree, again, she's like realizing like this is like, this is much more her comfort zone, right? Like she feels safe here, but she also does feel uncomfortable because she again the nature of her magic, she can sense all of this magic, so it's really overwhelming for her, because there's all different types of layers of magic that she can't really parse, and they're kind of coming from everywhere, so she's also just like, it's like a
Overstimulated.
weird feeling of like being like, oh, okay, these are my people, but also I'm just like overstimulated. um
Sensory meltdown.
Exactly.
I
She's
know
she's
it
holding it
well.
together for now, but it's definitely like it's up there. Um, and so she has this moment where she says, if Nick hadn't been taken and I hadn't escaped the Regents, would I have ever known a place like this existed? Um, and the answer is no. And I think that that's the other thing that I really love about this book is like we always talk about like Bree is an outsider, and like obviously she's treated as an outsider to the order in a way that she shouldn't be and in a way that's really racist, but at the same time like she kind of has to be in order for this like book to work, especially around the world building and around her, like, she's all these other kids are like brought up in the order, and so they're never able to question or even to like get the opportunity to see anything different, um before being told that that's like unregulated and that it's
Yeah.
wrong and that it's like rogue, you know what I mean? And you can see it in the way that like Cell reacts to all of this. Like Bree reacts to it with wonder and like amazement. And Cell is reacting to it as if it's like inherently wrong. Um and we don't really see I think Will is mostly just trying to like, make up for
Well said.
before and stay under the
Yeah.
radar and be chill. But and like Alice can only see so much of it,
Yeah. But
Um
I think it also goes into, I think another thing, and a thing I really appreciate about this story and Bree is that even though Bree immediately kind of feels like, oh, these are my people and I feel at home here, she's still an outsider here too, because she
she
in the
doesn't really know
same way
how
in
any of
which
this
she didn't,
works.
well, not only she doesn't know how any of this works, but she didn't grow up with any of this. Like, she didn't grow up with root crafters, and like her
Mm-hmm.
family was like purposefully, but also culturally, like kind of shunned by that community, because like blood crafting is like not done, and or I don't know how else you would say it, like kind of taboo, right? So
Mm-hmm.
even now she's like kind of getting a glimpse of this and being like, I would not have known any of if I would not have known if any that this existed without like some of the trauma and horror that she's been through. But also, as we get further and further into this world, you also kind of see that she's still, though she feels a kinship with them, she's still outside. And like she'll say
Mm-hmm.
certain things where even Dalek is like, oh girl, ooh, they got you. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like but it's because she doesn't have anyone, and like the way her family, out of necessity, but the way that she's come into her magic from her family, she doesn't have anyone to like show her that other side. So she's
Yeah.
um
She's
an
having to
outsider
like
in
piece it
two
together for
ways.
herself.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. So they find a seat in the back corner. Um, Bree and Alice joke about Bree's outfit, so they like Bree kind of realizes that her shirt is showing a little bit more cleavage than Alice's. And so they're like joke. She's like, we should have coordinated because like we don't match at all. And so they're joking about that, and then Will like compliments Bree and like the color she's wearing, red and black. And then Alice, because she's a messy best friend, asks Sel what he thinks about Bree's outfit.
With like mischief in her eyes. Like Bree clocks
Literally.
exactly, like right before she looks at Alice and goes, oh God,
It's like,
here
here
we
we
go.
go. It's like, why must you be this way? And so Sel just kind of like briefly looks at Bree and goes, Brianna looks nice. And so Bree is
Ouch.
immediately like trying not to be offended by that, because she's just like, that's a terrible way to like describe it. But at the same time, she's like, I have no right to feel offended by this. So
Right. She's
I just
like,
have to
I
like
shouldn't care.
swallow it.
This is my man's man. This is not my man.
Yeah. Like
Please
I just
remind yourself
can't.
of that, Bree.
But Alice has no qualms in that sense. So she can be loudly offended. Um But then Sel changes the subject by complaining about the service. So again, this is another knock for me, because I'm just like, you just got here.
Yeah.
This is a bar, so you have
Have
no
to go to
idea
the
if maybe
bar.
you need to be going to the bar to order. Um and you're just like, it's just very, he's giving Karen, it's pissing me off, not gonna lie.
And some places like you to be able to sit down, get comfortable, like figure out, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like look at the menu. Like
He's just immediately
just
like
annoyed at
you know
things.
what I mean? And like
Yeah.
loudly about it. Like he's just immediately like turning his nose down at the place and not really curious about it at all. Um and not that he needs to be like fascinated by it. Like it's not that deep, but it's just like, you have to be able to get out of your own ass, honestly.
Yeah.
Sorry to be crass
But it's
about it,
also
but like,
one of the things that I will say as like an anxious person, and it's one of my bigger things I hate and why I don't like going out, is because I hate going places where I don't know how things work.
mhm,
And I think I've told you this before, because there's a coffee place, Phil's Coffee, where in the Bay. I think
yeah.
they're expanding now. But anyway, I didn't go to for a very long time. When I like where I worked, it was like everyone went to Phil's, and I was like, I walked in and immediately walked out, because I was like, I don't know how that works, and I don't want to be the one standing in the like line when you're supposed to be in that line. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I need I need signage to tell me how this works.
Right. Or like a person who has
Or
been there before
yeah,
to kind of
to
direct.
to direct me. But I know that as a me thing, and I'm not gonna loudly be like, this place has terrible.
Yeah. And it also just feels like, again, I think it because of, we see who is in this place, right? We see who are the
Mhm.
majority of people here, and just the, like, assumption, and he says it a couple times of, like, "I'm just trying to get quality service," and I'm like, "Can you be any more, like,
Yeah. The
white
dog
about this?"
whistles
Like, what
are
the hell?
whistling.
Like, yeah, it's just very, and, on top of it, Cell is extremely dramatic, so it's not like it doesn't feel like it's out of character for him at all, but it's definitely a turn off. It's just like, "Bro,
Yeah.
get a grip."
Be chill.
Um, so yeah, and of course he says that, and then the waitress, her name is Emma, is of course right behind him, so it's very, like, comical in that way. Like, you're talking shit and the person you're talking shit about is literally right behind you. Um, and so she, like, then Cell starts trying to flirt with her or whatever, which Bree is also trying to be chill about. But then Alice also is trying to flirt and orders alcohol. And Bree is all shocked, and Alice is like, Shh, we got this. We about to
Trying to
get some
blend
drinks.
in. Right. Also, is this the first time that we learn about Alice's preference for women?
No, it's mentioned, like, early in Legendborn that she's
Oh, see,
gay.
missed it,
Yeah.
or more than likely didn't miss it, forgot.
Yeah, because it's, like, very early in the, it's one of the early chapters, but Alice is not really in Legendborn like
She's
that,
not in much
and
more. Yeah,
she was,
we don't need to go into it.
yeah.
You've forgiven her.
There was more going on, and it wasn't the focus. Not that it's the focus here, but, like, there just wasn't another time for her to, like,
Yeah,
for it to be mentioned.
reiterate. Yeah,
Yeah. So Emma, like, takes the orders. She compliments Bree's top on her way out. And then Alice is like, "See, this is why I date girls. Taste." And then Cell goes, "I have taste." And then I was like, "God, I'm so embarrassed for you right now," which is so real, because it's just like you're being
a lot.
just a lot. You're just white manning up the place right now, and I need you to just
But
introspect.
it's also it's a thing where you're just like, if Stella's gonna do anything, if Stella's gonna be anything, it's gonna be dramatic. It's gonna
Yeah.
be, you know.
And just
And
he's so sulky. He's like, "I have
he's
taste." It's like,
uncomfortable.
"Shut
He's
up."
uncomfortable. He didn't want to have to look at Brianna and acknowledge the fact that she looked good. So he was like, "She looks nice. Move on." He
Right.
don't want to be here with all this unknown rogue magic. He doesn't. He wants to be on the road. Wants to be back in the
Mhm.
car. And
He's
his
worried
way of
about he's
dealing
worried
with
about
that,
Nick.
he's worried about Nick. His way of dealing with all of that is to just become insufferable.
Mhm.
And I hate to say
Literally.
it, this is my toxic trait. It's adorable.
Oh,
It's just
Lord.
so.
Nah, he was just pissing me off in these chapters.
It's so
Sometimes
cute.
him being insufferable is cute to me or funny or whatever. This time I was like, you're irking me, bro. I need you to."
It's a thing that I will only allow with fictional characters on the pages
Right.
of books, because in real life I would be like, if you don't get your shit together,
Yeah, like, get a grip, bro. Like, come
get a
on.
grip.
Come
But
on, dude.
this is giving me very much the way I feel about Loki when he's telling old people to kneel. It's like, oh, he's
Mm-mm.
hurt. He's just lashing out.
When he's telling old people to kneel. Oh my god.
Listen, he just
Um
he don't
so
know what to do with all these
Emma
emotions.
so Emma returns with the drinks, plus a little extra shot for the Cambion,
Because
which
even Emma said, "You're hungry. Have
you're
a
not you when you're
Snickers."
hungry. You need a Snickers. Sal and Will are immediately on, like, alert, because they're like, how do they know? How does she know I'm a Cambion or whatever? It's like, bro,
Have you
it's
seen
pretty
you?
fucking obvious, first of all. Second of all, the shot is of mage flame, so it's not like a regular. It wasn't like she was trying to flirt. She was like, "Ooh, you need to pick me up."
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
there's, like,
and
this
though you
kind
get
of
the sense too, because of the waiver and stuff, like they're they know that they are working in a volatile space, and so she takes one look at Cell and is like, I'm not just adding alcohol to this fire. Like, this is already this is a powder keg.
Right. You
You
need
like,
some stabilization before you start
yeah.
getting drunk up in here.
This is basically her like trying to give him water. Like, you've had, you know what I mean? Like, you need to hydrate.
So this is I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but it is a good like world building moment where so Cell is obviously like he's very reticent about drinking this mage flame. And they're kind of and like Will is also so it says his gaze turned scientific. So he's just like, interesting. Like, does she wants you to drink it? Like, you know what I mean? Because they don't do this. They've not done this before. So they're both like wary and a little, well, William is more like curious. Yeah. And so Bree is like, can you drink it? And Cell says, technically, biologically, yes. The cuffs block his ability to access ambient ether and use it, but he should be able to ingest it. Will is kind of like, wondering if it'll help fortify him, and kind of make up for the oaths that he can't fulfill. But again, Cell is still like not really trying to drink it. Will is like, just do it. You know what I mean? He's like, try, we'll see. And so he brings up,
there's also a sense in Will that he's like, it can't be no worse than what we dealing with right
now. Right. He's like, it can't hurt. Like, if anything.
Which is a weird thing where, like, that Bree doesn't really clock. Because William has already told her that, like, he can't do much to help or heal Cell. But he is also very much like, they just got away from people drugging them and like, like messing with like their powers and stuff like that. And I feel like it should kind of be a hint to Bree that Cell is not doing as well as she thinks, that William is like, I mean, hey, give it a shot. If he was staving off the demonia that, like, as well as she thinks he is, William would be like, you don't really need it. I think you're doing well. It was a nice gesture, but let's not force the issue. Instead, Will's like, can't hurt. I don't know. It just feels like that's saying something. That's
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, and I think that she knows that it's a struggle, but she doesn't realize how far gone. Or like, how much of a struggle. So yeah, so Will kind of explains a little bit about, so first he says the demons originate from the hell dimension. I'm like, okay, I know that's not what it's called in real life, or not in real life, but like, I know that's not what demons call it. Yeah. Like, the order is so like, please. Anyway, he says when they cross over via the gates to the living human plane, they become a form of undead that require both human energy, because they're chaotic, spontaneous, and animalistic, which also gives order propaganda. But humanity in some form offers order through mental clarity. Because if they want to survive, they have to think past their just like base instincts. And then also ether, which is like food. So it kind of gives physical sustenance, is what he says. And they need it in some way to maintain their forms on this plane. So like, this is just some basic like world building breakdown that I don't think really had yet.
We didn't know before.
Yeah. And so sorry. So then Will says that Kizia wanted Bree's her root, or like her ether, versus human energy, which means like human emotion. So demons feed off of like anger, fear, particularly, but just like human emotions, and then off of root. And so Cambians, though, don't need either because they're born on the human plane. But then he says, but demons are chaos creatures and chaos favors imbalance. As Cambions grow older, their demon blood grows stronger, and even though it's a very small part of their makeup, if they want to maintain control over their demon natures, they need to consume human energy to counterbalance it. And so for the Merlins, though, their oath is the counterbalance. So that's interesting in the sense of, like, we we're talking about how, or like, there's this mystery about Cell's mom and
Yeah.
how she was able to, like,
I have a
not
theory
succumb.
after this.
Yeah. I mean, you can go ahead and say it now. Like,
Yeah. Well, this and what Valak says, I don't even think we get to it in the next chapter either, but like,
yeah.
he says soon. I feel like Cell's mom is a Cambion in the way that Valak is, like, not
Yeah, same.
generations
Actually.
of generations of generations, but like her father or mother, I don't know, she's half human, half demon.
Mm-hmm.
She's a fully like Crossroads child, as opposed to what we see from like Lark and the other like mage Merlins, which is that they are in some ways like descendants of Merlin, so their level of demon is much less. And I think what's happening is that like Cell has more demon than the average Merlin, like he's more balanced, but he is oathed, and those oaths are causing havoc. Like the oath is the problem, and not actually his blood. Like if he hadn't taken those oaths, he would have been better off, basically.
Right. Yeah, I kind of sort of have the same theory, just that, like, the oaths actually don't, they maybe like accelerate the, either
I think they
accelerate
like
it, or
are twisted.
depending on the Merlin, don't actually, they kind of like, they don't actually help. Like, there are other, I feel like there are definitely other counterbalances for needing to consume human energy, or like other ways to consume human energy, probably. And right now we only know the oaths as an option because we're, it's the order. But yeah. Interesting. But Will does say, he says, oaths are belief and intention combined. Protecting others from harm is one of the most human things someone can do, the very antithesis to demonia. But without being able to like serve oaths, then this little shot could help. Cell is still struggling though. Like, I'm not really sure what it is. Like, I feel like it's probably just pride, like not wanting to need it.
I think pride and mistrust. He doesn't know these people. And he also, like, you can see he's got some very strong prejudices about this place and these people. So I think it's a little bit of.
He also calls it recreational, which is different than Will is thinking of it as medicinal.
Yeah.
And it's very, he even says at one point, he's like, as your doctor, I would prescribe it. I would recommend it. But Cell is thinking of it as something that's more frivolous and not necessarily something that could help him, and valuable, and that is valuable in that way.
It's very similar to the time that my doctor tried to prescribe me weed. And I was like, this isn't that kind of visit. And he was like, no, I'm being very serious. And I was like, no, I'm not trying to get a medical marijuana card. I'm trying to get help for my anxiety. And he was like, and I think marijuana will give you that help. That's what's happening here. It's like some of those drugs started off medicinally. And William's like, give it a shot.
Yeah. So before he's able to, though, Alice is like, look, this is great and all, but we still haven't peed from that last time.
Well, she says that because she's halfway done with her beer.
So she drank half of her beer, and then on top, and then also remembered at that point.
Her bladder
like,
said,
oh, shoot.
Girl.
It's like, you was already full. Ain't nothing left up here in here. So Bree's like, cool, I'll go with you, because she also has to pee. But then Cell obviously is like, I'll escort you. Bree, of course, is like, why? But it's like, girl, even if this was a place that you were 100% sure about, like, y'all are on the run. And Cell is, I mean, he don't have his power, but
I get both things though, because I feel like Bree is saying we're supposed to be laying low, and there is nothing low key about a dude walking two girls to the bathroom when we could just go by ourselves. But Cell is also like, you're not just two girls, you're the sign of author, and if anyone in here knows who you actually are,
I'm not gonna
making money.
What the heck?
Right. Like, no.
Yeah.
So
they go there. So they go to the shipping containers. Each one is labeled differently. One is respite, desires, delight, and so they're trying to figure out like which one. They go down the respite one, or respite. I don't know.
Respite.
That's what I thought. It's weird when I read it, like reading it on its own. I want to say respite, but then I'm like, but if I say it, I would say respite. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's that hall.
It may not actually. I mean, it may be both too.
Maybe both. That's true. English is weird that way. Either way, they go down that hall. Alice goes to the bathroom first, obviously, because she has done too much. But also this kind of gives Bree a moment to like settle after like she was still overstimulated in that room. She hasn't had a moment to just kind of like, take a breath. And there's not like there's hella magical people in this hall. It's literally just like her and Cell. So she gets a moment she like shuts her eyes, kind of gets a moment to calm for a second. But then this is just, Cell does not help this situation. Actually, it's like you could just let her chill, but the Demonia is doing what it's going to do. He still hasn't taken the shot, so he slides into place beside Bree. The line of his body presses into hers. The contact startles her enough that her eyes snap open and she jerks away, losing balance, which is like hilarious. Just like visually, it's giving like I would want to see it as like an anime. Like he sits next to her, she like jumps hella far and almost falls. So only to be stabilized by his palm on her lower back. His palm is burning through her shirt, hotter than the last time they touched. And so it says, when I look up, his eyes are searching my features, roaming to my hairline, my shoulders. His fingers, still pressed against my lower back, twitch, then spread wide over my spine. This giggling is so funny. What?
I'm so happy that Porshèa is not here.
I know.
She, at the level of dirty look I would be getting right now, but I cannot help it. I cannot. I think, like, where is Delia? Because
oh my gosh. My vocabulary does include more adjectives than the word nice, he murmurs. I flush. My voice comes out breathy and low. Could have fooled me. I'm halfway into sort of hating myself for sounding that way when I see the effect of my response in Cell's expression. The surprise and frustration and heat all rolled into one. He holds my gaze like he owns it. I don't want to look away, but I couldn't if I tried. The floor beneath me dips, the sounds around us grow muffled, my heart picks up, and even in a corridor rocked by thumping bass and distant voices, his ear tilts, listening to my pulse. Somehow in this moment, I am filling Cell's senses the same way he feels mine. I suppose it doesn't really matter, I whisper. Does it? His eyes dart down to my lips and my breath catches. His own mouth parts, the tips of his fangs just visible atop his lower lips. Without warning, he ducks his head and pulls me toward him simultaneously and draws a breath near my throat. His voice is a hoarse rasp below my chin, a tease and warning both. You are still asking questions that you do not truly want me to answer. What if I do want you to answer? I reply, bold. Then I would say you look devourable, he murmurs. And that, for me, is something I don't wish to share in mixed company for many, many reasons.
Oh.
Yeah. So that
How
scene
many
was
times will I
very
read this and have this reaction? Like my cheeks hurt. My cheeks hurt the whole way through that.
so funny.
The everything in me not to screech. The giggling is all I could do instead of
No, it's wild. I mean, we've like talked about it in our Discord when everyone was like I mean, it still comes up, but like when everyone was reading it in our like
devourable.
spoiler, like it definitely took out like RIP to some true to some real ones. It
I
definitely took
still
them
haven't
out.
recovered. When did this come out?
Yeah.
2 years ago? 2, 3 years? I have
Yeah,
not
2 years.
recovered.
Nah, it's definitely the tension is like off the charts.
Bury
Like
me in
writing
the
wise, like
ocean.
I need like I want to study this. You know what I mean? Like it's very like and devourable as a word.
Was not what I was. The thing too is that like I like delicious.
Yeah.
Like I what are other like there's other words that you like it devourable is not one of those words that like I want to devour you. I don't know. I read a lot of like monstery and I want to devour you said from a half demon can go either. I mean,
There's definitely levels to it. There's
but
100%. There's definitely, and I think that's the other thing. Like for me, and I'm not saying that this scene doesn't get me because it does, but reading it, knowing all of the
chokehold.
context that's happening, and knowing how Cell is acting out the rest of the time, it does like I don't know because obviously Portia's not here. I'm curious, like not I don't want
Portia's
to.
heart is black as night
I
when it
was gonna
comes
say I
to
don't want
this.
to like dim Robyn's glow or whatever,
I
but
don't want to know
I
what
will
Porshèa wants to
say,
know about it.
but I know, but I'm saying like I could see how with the added context, you know what I mean? It does like
Yeah.
he's not like it's not like it I guess what I'm saying is this adds to him being benched even though the scene itself is like
Yeah.
very intense and very like that every time you read it it's like oh my, like you want to clutch your pearls a little bit, but like at the same time it adds to him being benched because we know that he's like mesmering her right now. We know that
Yep.
like he's like there's all these other things he's lying to her and then he's doing this which like hints at that, you know what I mean? So it's just like it's a
Yep.
complicated moment. Um
Yep.
but it's also a moment.
But man, what a moment. What a moment. What a moment. Woo.
Yeah. 100%.
The splayed hand on the back is the thing that made it benched for me because like
Yeah.
when he saddles up he's like touching they're like touching sides, right? And then he
Mhm.
has to take it too far,
Yeah. Cuz he like
you know,
pulls her to him.
to him.
Like why are you putting your face
And
in her neck,
just a
sir?
hand like a guiding hand on the back or like a hand like a protective hand on the back. But once you splay, once you what
You got your lips at her neck is crazy.
oh soul ties is
That's just
crazy.
that's some serious seduction happening, you know? He's doing a lot in the bathroom hallway. And she still got to pee. Like this is kind of crazy actually, like
and then moves away cuz he could hear Alice coming and just takes it all away from her.
Wild.
Oh.
And she still has to pee. Like you're doing all of this. She's very overstimulated from the music and the layers of magic. She has
The
to
man
pee.
is a
Her
demon.
bladder's full. And now you're all up in her space. Talk about she looks devourable. Like give her a break. That's crazy. Wow. So
but it's still so it's so good.
Nah, it's very real. So then Bree, she goes to the bathroom. She comes out to find Sel and Alice. They're like agitated. And it's because they see that they found the sign that reads, "See the broker / proprietor for a bargain. No unregulated exchanges on the premises." So they're immediately thinking that the person who runs this place is the person who helped coordinate Jonas and Kizia's deal to kill Bree. So they're like, well, gotta blast. We gotta be out. Because so I was like, I can't believe you took. Now I was just calling you devourable. Meanwhile, you got us in this rogue's den with the dude who tried to kill you. Like, what the heck? But assumptions. Anyway, so they send. So Cell just wants to leave. Will is like, we definitely have to pay our tab. Like, be for real.
We're not causing a scene.
Yeah.
Remember that? He does not remember.
He doesn't at all, because he goes to pay for the tab. And then the show
causes a scene.
Stage. So the show, there's a show that starts on stage. There's like these performers who are what are they called? The three sisters Marigna. And they like appear on stage with these like in these sparks, basically. They appear out of nowhere, just like the bouncer did before. And it's another, like, more people in this place who are using ether that isn't theirs, whatever that means. You know what I mean? If it's bound to them or they're borrowing it or whatever. And so while they're watching the show, like waiting for Cell decides to pick a bar fight with the bartender, who is also a warlock. Again,
because they're laying low.
This is what you would do. He's trying to cut the line. So that's the thing. He's like, I need to pay my bill. This is urgent. Other folks are like, are you trying to jump the line? Bree is like going up to Cell because she's just like, what the hell are you doing? Which is that's actually literally what she says. Sorry, I'm just laughing because in my head I was like, what the hell are you doing? And then I looked down and that is actually what she asks him.
That's exactly verbatim what she said. But also, like we just said about Bree feeling like the need to stick up for Cell and stuff, he just called her devourable, just had his hand splayed on her back, and now she looks up and he looks like he's in distress, so she goes over there. William is like, not you.
No, but she's not going over there to stand up for him.
Well, no, I think she's walking over there because she sees a disturbance, and then as she gets closer, seeing that he's the reason there's a disturbance, and then she's immediately annoyed.
Well, but he literally goes, he says, who do you think you are, kid? A male voice spits, half amused and half not. And then it goes, no, he wouldn't. Yes, he would. And so then, you know what I mean? So she's like, what is happening? And then immediately he was like, Cell and fucking Kane can't, be chill for 2 seconds. You're the one who said we have to leave.
The bar tab.
Like, come on. So he's like, so then he goes, I'm a customer. I'm asking for quality service, something that seems to be beyond the staff here. I'm like, get your white ass out. I'm sorry. I can't. I just can't. It's too much. Like, you're pissing me off, dude. Clearly they haven't ordered the things. If you would just wait calmly, you wouldn't be calling attention to yourself.
Calm and Cell.
If you just wait in line. I know that it's Cell, but that's why they should have sent William or somebody. But
they should have sent William. They should have sent Alice.
Like, come on. So the bartender is getting pissed off, and is like starts to call on his magic. Cell goes, he sniffs the air and says, I thought I smelled warlock. I thought I smelled warlock. I'd hoped it was just an exaggeration, but the rumors appear to be true. Packed magic leaves an awful stench. Which Bree also concurs in her head. Bree concurs in her head that the warlock ether smells rotten or rancid. But Cell didn't need to say that out loud, because now Alonzo, the bartender, warlock, he jumps onto the floor.
You ready to fight?
Towering over them. Talking about, say that again. Say it to my face. Since you want to talk. Cella's bench. I know we have one more chapter, but like, bro, my goodness, it's just getting worse and worse.
Worse and worse. So So Bree steps in between Cell and the warlock bartender who is ready to throw hands. Because, I mean, listen, I forget the warlock's name. It's like Adam or something. I don't know, whatever. There's only so much disrespect you could take.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not going to let anybody just talk to you all crazy. Mm-hmm. He works here. He's just trying to do his job. A lot of these people seem to be regulars, right? There's a membership. He's not about to hear for the rest of the year, oh, remember that little kid came in here, that little Cambion came in here talking to you crazy and you just swallowed it. You know what I mean? Like, there's just a lot of like ego and pride mixed up into this, and none of it was necessary if Cell would have just paid the bill or, you know, done the old school, tossed some bills on the table and got out. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you didn't do it the right way, but you didn't skip out on the check. Bree has this magic, right? She was just talking about how she wants to learn how to control it. She was just talking about how she wants to be able to use it offensively. But what she does know is that she cannot control it defensively, but still steps in between Cell and this warlock who is coming at Cell ready with like intention to do harm.
Mm.
So what does Bree's magic do? It do what it do. Mage flame shoots up out of her. She sets the warlock on fire. Low profile, blown.
Yeah,
gone.
completely gone.
Everybody, the whole building turns their head and it's like, what is going on over here?
Mm-hmm.
And they see this warlock surrounded in blue flame, and this blue flame shooting out of this little girl's arms.
Yep. And it snatches his magic.
Oh yeah. Forgot about that.
Like, that's the other thing, is it literally takes his magic away. So everybody's staring now. All eyes on them. All eyes on Bree.
All eyes on Bree. And then Valak, homeboy, we don't know him as Valak yet, but he shows up.
Woo!
And he's
a real Cambion. Like sorry.
A true Cambion. 100%.
You know,
50.
Put your hands together for a true Cambion. Right. You know what I'm saying?
You know what I mean? Like, none of this fake, none of this diluted mess. He looks younger than Cell, I think is how he's shorter. Let me just read his description, because it's important to know what Valak got going on. Alonzo is the warlock, but he shows up and he says, and that is a demonstration of the new power set I hope can be made available in the coming months if supply chain issues work out. And they turn around and the boy is tall enough to partially block Alonzo, who's the warlock, when he steps between them and claps in big, convincing slaps of his hands, and the audience starts to applaud. And he looks at all of them and gives an order that shows like this is the guy that's actually in charge. He says, smile. And then he turns back to applaud to them as if their performance. But then as soon as the crowd like starts to go back to what they were doing, his grin disappears and he's like, get up. He calls over Lewis to take them to his office, and they just like disappear. But before that, Bree says if she'd have seen him from far away, she would have called him a Merlin on sight. A young one, maybe Cell's age. Golden red light reflect off of his warm brown face. There's an unnaturally beautiful, inhuman grace in his strides and movement. Hair shorn close on the sides, but rising in thick, tight curls. So you got high and tight. Where others are in dark jeans. and leather and denim. He wears a charcoal pinstripe suit, pants, a gray button down, and a tailored burgundy vest under a blood red jacket. So he's also like sharp.
Swag.
Like them uncles that like show up to church once a year, but when they show up, they show out. He got a gold watch tucked in his vest pocket, a delicate braided chain looped over from a hiding place, and his eyes sparkle like wine red gems. And so then she's like, maybe he's a gore child, maybe he's a demon like Roz or like Kizia. But nope. He is a Cambion.
Well, she doesn't know that yet. She's just
she's
he
trying to figure out.
And then his eyes are brown again. So then she's like, maybe it was a trick of the light.
Yeah.
Like maybe I just missaw.
Yeah. So at first look, she's like, oh, he looks like he's a Merlin. She doesn't, or Cambion. And then he looks again and she's like, oh, no, that's a Gorchel. And then he turns again and she's like, okay, I don't know what's going on. But he is definitely the one in charge. So he then looks at Cell, turns his head to Alonzo and says, wave and clap. And Alonzo's like, he's shrunken now. All of his magic is gone. But he like blows his air out and he waves like a performer who's just put on a scene. And then he's like, back to our regularly scheduled show. Applications for these abilities can be started at the bar along with the usual deposit, of course. Like, he doesn't know what this is yet, but he's still going to collect their money.
He said, look.
Business first, right? Always be selling. Always be closing, ABCs.
Literally.
So then the bar, like, everything kind of starts to settle down. We don't know if
he immediately puts Alonzo back to work. He's like, look.
He said, you get back behind the bar.
And then he buys a round for everybody. He's like, look.
Yeah.
You better stop messing around in my place of business.
And then Bree's like, oh, I recognize your voice. You're the one that just announced the Morgana, the Morigna. And he is like, that's one of my favorite parts of the evening. Glad you enjoyed it. And then you did this, right? So he has them in sent back to his like office, which is like really funny because so he asks their names and Cell gives him his name and then he asks Bree's name and Bree hesitates trying to figure out if she's going to give him the name on her fake ID or not. And he is like, truth only. So Bree says Brianna Matthews.
But also,
like, I'm not.
Cell gonna be like, it's gonna be hard for her. Like, he's not lying to her right now. Get out of my face.
And also, like they're not in this situation because he had to go talk his shit.
Like, come on.
Like, so you should immediately have been like, let me be quiet. Because me talking is what got us here in the first place. So he calls Lewis over. Lewis holds them. They pop out of the bar and into Valak's office.
This moment before Valak comes in where like they're well, for one, Cell tries to leave the room and it like burns his hand. And then Bree is like, whatever, you'll heal anyway, like serves you right. Because you started this fight. Like,
are you okay? And he's like, of course I'm okay. I'm totally fine. And it's like,
well, good.
How are you giving me attitude?
So she's trying to figure out, like, he has this weird like prejudice against warlocks, and he says it's because they bargain for their powers, and it's like, okay, but your homies steal their power, so now what? Like, what makes one version of like using ether better than another?
And it's also like very, I would say it reads very obvious that like his aversion to warlocks is purely from what he's learned or been taught growing up, because he's never met one before.
He's
like,
and so he's like,
From what I heard, warlocks are rather disgusting, and it turns out they are. I admit I lost focus, or maybe I got distracted by the smell. I might have started a fight with him regardless on principle.
It's like, shut up.
And then he calls what warlocks do tasteless because they bargain and sell a few years of their lives. They bargain by selling a few years of their lives, their firstborn, their soul, etc., in exchange for some of the demon's ability. And it's like, you owe to yourself when you're 7 years old.
Come on.
Like, your forefathers bargained their firstborns, their whole line. Your whole line is bargained.
Well, not his whole line, but
not his, but the Merlin.
Yeah, the people that you like protect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just interesting because
it's even the Merlins, even the Mage Guard, like they are like basically, like we said, like they're like in between kind of being bred.
Yeah.
To do this thing. You know what I mean? Like they exist to serve these people who bargain their line. And it's all like you said, it's like what makes this way of holding power, like stealing power better than bargaining for power. At least in the bargain, everyone hopefully is consenting.
Right. Like, unless you're firstborn, in which case that's not like sorry to the baby.
Exactly. But also like Cell is basically the first, like you got like or Will is basically the firstborn. Like they didn't consent to this.
Right.
They're just thrust into it. So how is that better?
Yeah, it's just a weird, but I do get it. Like I understand why. It's just at a certain point, I'm like, you're gonna need to unlearn this, dude, because like, the world is so much wider than like whatever the damn order taught you. And on top of that, like you're already learning that the order itself is, and you've known that like the way that you've been treated by the order, even if you believed in like what they were doing, was wrong. So, it's just a lot. It's like you're having to like, I don't know. I need him to be more open to learning new ways of magic and not immediately acting like it's inferior because it's not.
And beyond all of that, you needed to at least, even if you couldn't have done that in this moment, you needed to at least have enough self-control to shut up, pay the bill, and let's go. Because now we're in the proprietor bar, like the reason why we had to leave, right?
You're literally in his office now.
In his office now.
That's what you landed in the like 5 minutes between finding out that he was here and trying to leave. You land in his office. You land Bree in his office.
The person you're supposed to protect.
Mm-hmm.
So then Valachaz,
I assumed it was Valachaz, but
Valachaz. Oh, I just did the CH as a sh.
Yeah.
But we call him Valak. His mama call him Valak. I'm gonna call him Valak. Not really, but he told us to call him Valak, so I'm gonna call him Valak. Joins them into the office, and like his kind of like his anger is showing, basically.
Mm-hmm.
He's just like, y'all done caused the scene in my place of business, which is against the rules, and you're here as guests, and you couldn't even, so he's like, you've really gone and fucked things up. If it weren't for the wards, that pulse of power would have had every demon in a mile radius banging on the goddamn door. So that's like another thing about Bree's power that she like knows about, but
she can't control it.
She can't control it, and she can't. Like, she not only can she not control like when her powers come, she can't control like how much, right? Because like they were talking about like after the Ogoth, thank you. How they had to like tell Patricia and the root crafters around like that pulse of power was me, like hide, or like lay low.
Mm-hmm.
But then the right she was worried about the blood crafters again, and then figured out like it probably wasn't as big. Right? So when she finally got to talk to someone. So she also like, yeah, she can't control her own powers, but she also can't control like that, the size of it. She can't just be like, oh, just a tiny bit, right? Like, and so that pulse, we also kind of see that like Doc doesn't want demons in his place of business either.
Or at least not all the demons. Like like he definitely does like business with demons, but he's like, I don't need them
overrunning the place. They don't need, you know, there are also humans here I'm doing business with, like, you know, there's a reason why this place is like, there's all these rules. It's, but then he like looks at Brianna and he's very curious as well, right? Like that was a whole new kind of power.
Yeah.
And he played it off.
I didn't sorry. There's also she stripped this dude of his power that he like paid for. Yeah. So that's also an issue. It's like you're not supposed to be allowed to do that. Like, so and now he's also having to deal with that on like a business level.
Yeah, because it's not supposed to be like not even like you're not allowed to do it. It's not even supposed to be a thing that could be done. Right. So now he has like these humans worried that they're paying for access to this power and someone could just take it from them. And we get a sense that the payment is high. So they're not eager to go through with things if that could happen with the ease in which she did it. And he says, whether it's temporary or permanent, it's a damn powerful parlor trick. And so he's got furious demons and spooked warlocks asking for amendments. And then clients who think like he could have been offering them that kind of power and he hasn't been. So he lets them know that they violated the lounge's policies, removed someone's rightfully owned and paid for abilities, and undermined his authority as proprietor. And they're in his debt until he calls them even, which is crazy. Because who are you? How much debt is that?
Right.
What do I have to do to get even? Can I do? You know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of it's a very terrifying thing to hear.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Absolutely. They're on the run.
Now you found yourself in the debt of somebody.
To be in the debt of a proprietor of
demon human,
a broker of demon magic. Yeah. And then so he asks, what does he say? He says, to begin with, Brianna, he wants to know what deal she has struck, which demon did she strike it with, and that if there's an ether-infused NDA, he could break the bond. So we're learning a lot about like how ether and magic are working outside of the purview of the order here, and like how like humans like Brianna, are like regular humans, not humans like, but like someone like Alice could get their hands on this kind of power, right? They would go to someone like Valak, have a deal. There would be terms to the deal, right? And there's possibly an ether-infused NDA where you can't say anything about it, right? So,
which I assume is kind of like an oath.
Yeah, that's what it seems like to me.
Potent.
No, I think just not as like long-lasting.
Yeah,
like they're like, it's not like when you oath yourself, that's like your entire life is tied to that for into perpetuity, right? And so it feels like with deals, there's like
Or maybe a time limit or something.
Yeah, well, there's just different there's just different parameters to it, and it's not just like life or death, which seems like that's what the oaths are.
Right.
Because like even with Alonzo's owed redress, right? Like there's the idea of like if something happens and it breaks the deal, like you can be owed redress or like payment, right? So it's a little bit more or a little less bloody.
Yeah.
And then even like what Cell was explaining with like the Warlocks, like they give up some like maybe some years of their life, or there's like other ways in which they can do it. Like the firstborn thing is crazy, but like with the oaths and with like abatement, it's like 35-ish, you done, right? Like here it's like, okay, if the average human lifespan is like 80, that's not right, but let's say it's 80, then I might sell off the last 5 years so I live to 75. But I like made that choice, and it's not, I'm not burning through my lifespan in the same rate in which like the Order members are,
right,
or the Legendborn are. So what we learned too in his terms of like, or in his debt, is that he's so impressed with Brianna's power that he will let her go on all counts if she tells him everything she knows about the power, and says,
which is funny because she don't know
freedom,
nothing about it.
She don't know nothing, but her freedom in exchange for that extremely valuable information is the balance. And it's kind of funny because if she wouldn't have had to tell him that she's Arthur, if she could figure out how she could like explain this to him without bringing in like the Legendborn and that she's a sign of Arthur, it would be worth it, because she don't know much. She could be like, I came from a family of root crafters, and my great grandmother in a time of crisis struck a bargain to protect
but the thing
us,
is,
and now
though,
it's bonded to my blood, and that's all I got. Because
but the thing is that Valak assumes that her power is something that she bargained for.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like she didn't use Arthur's power, she used Vera's. She used her root. But also even Vera did something similar to Arthur, and then I guess we find out later that what's his name? Erebus just kind of like added his own little, right, you know what I mean? Like he kind of snuck in on it. Like Vera didn't go to Erebus to strike a deal. He was just in the area and was like, "Ooh,
yeah, she
let
went
me
to
get
her
in on that."
But I mean,
and because of that, it's like one of those things where like, dude is like Valak is wrong because Bree didn't strike any deals, but like then in some ways it is also kind of a like hint or like foreshadowing of like more of what's happening here, because Bree got like 50 different oaths tied to her body at this point. Poor girl.
And so then she's like, I didn't Cell and Brianna are like, I didn't make a deal. I didn't strike a deal with anyone. And Valak is like, of course you did. Can you tell me who your broker is? Like, that's where he's like, I can break your contract, or if it has an NDA, I can break that for you. Thinking that like she's not saying anything because of this NDA, this ether infused NDA. And then he's like, do you want to tell me who brokered it for you? In which case Cell is like, there's another broker? Because they're thinking
there's one
of the broker in capital, like the broker, right? And what they're finding out is that like, no, this is like Valak is the broker in this area.
But y'all was 3 hours away, so there might be a different. Y'all might have been dealing with somebody else.
Exactly. And so he says the fact that there is another broker in this area might change things. But of course there are other brokers, but I am like, he is like, someone is messing with my territory type of thing. and he's like, I'm the only local broker that facilitates deals between humans and demons. And I'm kind of in the sense of like local for human demon dealings is much bigger than local for like the local taco shop. Like, where it's like, you know, a couple street corner, you know, like you got like a couple blocks. Like I'm thinking a couple states. Like if you are in the southern region of the United States, you got to go to Valley, not just Georgia, but he take care of Georgia, Mississippi. You know what I mean? That's what I'm hoping.
I feel like there are more. I don't know how wide it spreads, but I think that this does indicate that he is not the same broker that they thought he was.
Right. I think so too, but
yeah,
we don't know. And also that it could have been a broker, you know, in North Carolina. It could have been a broker somewhere else. I think when they got on the plane, they went to Georgia. So they were in Georgia. They're 3 hours away from where the safe house was, but they left the state in the plane.
I can't remember.
I believe, but yeah. Either way though, it's not. We're kind of coming to the realization that Valak doesn't, like, the name Brianna Matthews didn't register to him, so he's probably not the broker that Jonah and Kezia worked with. But this is how we're finding that out. So then they like reiterate that she didn't make a deal, and Valak says he's the only broker of his kind, which is how he knows someone made a mint off of a commission, a commission off of a deal like yours. Permanent ether generation, demon power destruction, tucked in a pretty package. And then Bree's like, "Are you hitting on me?" And she's like, "Yeah." Valak's like, "You know, I can multitask. I can do both." And then he wants to know, what did she have to give up in exchange? Because he can tell that like her soul is still attached. So it must have been an enormous fee that she gave in exchange for this power, but she looks perfect, is what he says. So he's hitting on her.
He's doing the most. He's doing the most.
He's multitasking. He just, you know, covering all of his bases. He can do both. Bree is like, "I didn't sign anything. I didn't make a deal." And then he's like, "An unregulated bargain, Brianna, in this day and age?" And like,
he said in 2022 like, or whatever they're in. Yeah. 2020.
Wow, you know, you really walking and living life on the edge over here, Brianna. And so she's like insistent about this, and then he's getting frustrated, annoyed, bordering on angry, because he's like, "I know that you did something. Like, this is not, and you were not born with this ability. He says, you're human. You smell, well, augmented, layered, but you're human." So he decides then, or Brianna says, like, "I'm just here to talk to Lucille." And so she throws out the name Lucille. And then we find out, like, Valak says, "Why would Lucille agree to see you when you cannot follow the sworn rules of entry? She is the grand dame of this territory." And I said...
And that's on Karen Huger.
Karen! Thank you!
Shout out to Karen.
Shout out to Karen Huger, the grand dame of the Potomac. But any and all procedures that Valak follows have been approved by Lucille. So she's good. She's as good as endorse any punishment that he chooses to give them for breaking the rules of his establishment. So she's like, he's still not buying the, I didn't make a deal, I can't tell you anything, I didn't sign anything, I'm not, whatever. So he's like, all right, let me move on to Selwyn Kane and let you see what I can do, or what you might be facing, and while you think a little bit more about what you are willing to tell me. Because also in Valak's mind, he's like, I'm giving you the best deal, like I could be punishing you. All I want is some information. Like, this is easy peasy compared to what could be happening, and you're still fighting me on it. But then he looks at Sel and he goes, well, I already figured out that the best way to hurt you is to hurt, or to punish you is to hurt her. Oh, okay.
Jinkies.
Jinkies, right. So Sel is like, don't you dare, and he goes in full Sel mode. But
the problem with full Sel mode is that Sel has no ether generation right now.
He's cuffed
and
up.
He's young as hell. So he is actually weak as hell.
Yeah.
This is
so
not
Valak is just like
match. A good
basically doing the thing that I love to do with like shorter and younger kids, where you put your hand on their forehead and they just swing wildly without connecting at all. That's what Valak is basically doing to Sel. He's like too slow. And he's like, what do you think he's gonna do, Bree? Jump down on top of me with his angry eyes and flaming fists? Not void cuffed like that. And then it's like, even if you didn't have the void cuffs, I'm not worried. But with the void cuffs, this is laughable. This is a joke. Like, and then starts to taunt him. Little King's Mage, leashed by the Order his whole pathetic existence, and now manacled by them too.
Yeesh.
And Sel is like, how do you know who I am? Valak's like, I've been around a long time. And so then he goes, I find it curious that Bree here so consumes your protective intentions. She's clearly a brave, smart, gorgeous girl, but to capture the singular focus of a King's Mage who is sworn to protect the sign of Arthur only. And like Sel and Bree kind of like tense at that, but Valak is still like still thinking that Nick is the sign of Arthur, and like uses Nicholas Davis, like uses his full government. But it's like, Bree must be very special, and I like special things. I'm a special thing myself. Like,
I love
just
him.
taunting, talking mad shit, but also like letting them know that he is not scared of them. I know what's going on here. Like, I know the bulk of it. I'm not, your little secrets, your little order, your little whatever does not frighten me. And then he's like, both of your hearts flipped just now and your breathing changed when I mentioned Nick's name. Is there anything either one of you would like to tell me about the once and future king? And then Sel's like, keep his name out of your mouth. And then Valak looks at Bree and is like, I bet it's annoying, isn't it? So focused on protecting his king that he forgets about anyone else. And then like Bree starts to kind of flush. And he's like, oh, I detect a story there. Felt like, you have no idea. Lunges again. Valak pushes Bree aside, grabs Sel around the throat, and lifts him in the air. And like, meanwhile, we're like, Valak is described as like kind of being shorter or smaller than Sel, but like not worried, like, at all.
No.
Says, you are too young and too weak to beat me, so stop trying. He's like, this is boring now.
He's like, first of all,
we're wasting
you're a
time.
baby. You're a baby. You have on these void cuffs. Like, please be for real.
Please be for real. Calls him a pup, which I love because I love calling people pups. I call Ami not to pup all the time. Says, who do you think you're fooling? You're a wreck. And then looks at Sel, looks at Bree, and then goes, oh, I know how to punish you by harming Brianna. I got it. I thought that I was going to have to hurt her, but you've done that on your own. You've already done it.
Mm-hmm. He said, "Oh, this is gonna be this is easy, easier than I thought." When he said easy peasy, he meant that.
Easy peasy part 2.
He was right. He was right.
Abe said, it's also going to be pretty entertaining, ain't it?
Yeah, I will say too before we wrap up real quick. He does also have a mention of Nick and Sel's bond, and of how Nick feels his bloodlust, which is not something that Bree knows yet. And like he just hints at it. He doesn't like go all the way
into it. But yeah.
But I just want to like, so sorry to like their bond right now. Like earlier, Nick was making Sel feel horrible because he was in danger, and now like hours later, Nick probably keeled over somewhere because Sel is feeling murderous.
But also, I can't remember, but I think it's just in the like extra chapter, the chapter from Sel's point of view? After that they added in Legendborn, where not only can like Nick feel that he's feeling murderous, but like he knew when Sel was feeling murderous about Bree.
No, he didn't. He found out.
Oh, he didn't?
After, like when they found him. So he just knows that he's feeling murderous, but doesn't know.
I was trying to give him a little. I was like, I mean, at least he has like the knowledge of knowing it's not about Bree this time.
I mean, I think he does know. I think he does know, but he's not. He can't confirm it.
Yeah, I mean, he knows in his bones because Bree is Arthur, and Sel would not feel murderous towards Arthur, type of thing. But it's still. I was trying to give him a little bit of, relief, but nope. So then Valak is like, raises his hands to Bree's face, and says, "Look at me." Sel is like, "Don't touch her." And then Bree says, first off, if Merlin's eyes look both old and young, Valak's eyes look ancient. Like his eyes churn the space between us, creating a link I've never felt before, like Mesmer, but more like firm hands around my mind, squeezing and then letting go. And then Valak says, now look at him, look at Sel. But Sel is keeled over, hands on his knees, head bowed, like he's trying to catch his breath, but also like he's hiding from. He doesn't want her to see him. She looks at Valak and she's like, why? And he's like, because he doesn't want you to. And then she goes up to Sel and he's like, don't. And Valak says, if you don't turn around on your own terms, Kane, you'll do so on mine. And so then he stands up, turns and looks at her. His profile becomes visible, and then she gasps, oh my God. And that's where it ends.
First of all.
And I said, fuck that.
Why would you do that?
Chapter 34.
Second of all, Valak, a transparent king, you know? He said, look, what we're not going to do is lie.
The truth hurts. Truth hurts. But here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
That's where we end.
MVP.
Valak. And I gave a little special one to Alice because I think that like Alice in this and I mean she's not in the last chapter, but in the first two chapters, she's just so good at going with the not going with the flow as like, she's not cowed by this. And like I'd have been like, you know what, Bree, I love you to death. How about y'all drop me off on the side of the road? I'm gonna go home. I'm not gonna tell your daddy what it is, You can check in with me. Let me go be the man in the chair somewhere else. She is just she cannot see. She's like,
yeah.
She was solidified MVP for me when she was standing with them at the Crossroads Lounge without the sight. I'd have taken that, like, I don't know if they say it before, but like, if she took that shot, she'd be able to see, because it's kind of like the oath or whatever that they give, like, the pages so they can start to see the demons and stuff. There's ether in it. But there's just something about being ride or die and being down when you don't have all of the information and are, like, not fully, you're kind of, like, at a disadvantage. And so
yeah,
couldn't be me, but it is Alice. And then Valak for being Valak and showing up.
Yeah, that's real. I made Valak my MVP. I just feel like, one, because I love him, but two, I just feel like he has a great entrance. He definitely shows, like, not I don't know. I think one, he is also very entertaining. He's hilarious. And he just, like, immediately sun Cell in a way that, like, I love Selwyn. But up until this point, other than, like, the Merlins who were clearly, like, older than him, he's the golden child. He's the most, like, isn't he, like, the strongest Merlin of his generation or whatever, and all that stuff. And so he's got a big head. He's been like, hyped up a lot. And yes, granted, he is void cupped, but, like, then you get there, you get to somebody who looks young. He's obviously, we, like, know that Valak is, like, at least 100 years old, older than that, but, like, still. But you're immediately like, oh, okay, there are other folks out here who are not Merlins and who are, like, just, it's difference in skill level or power level. And then
I
also
love that,
like,
he comes in where you think he's about to be, like, another, like, a villain, or, like, he is a foil, but, like, he's talking about punishing them and stuff like that, and then his, like he's, first off, he's doing it in the most entertaining way, but then he looks at what, like, he's reading their dynamic, and the punishment is to, like, just tell Bree the truth.
right. Like, he's like, oh yeah, just all I gotta do is hurt her. And then he's like, well, I don't even have to, like, I didn't say physically hurt her.
Yeah.
I just meant, like, she's going to be in pain somehow. This case emotionally works just as well as
Just
physically.
as well.
He's like, I'm not picky
bonus
about
is
it.
that she's not even gonna be mad at me about it. She's gonna be mad at you about the pain. So, because I'm still trying to holler. I could still holla,
right.
Which is problematic when we figure out that he's over 100 years old. But,
exactly. But it's like, sir. Yeah, so I don't know. I love Valak. Bench, we already know who I bench. I bench Sal because he's just on one.
I tried.
He never really got off of it, and so I just couldn't do it.
I'm telling y'all, I tried so hard. I just, is it the racist gas station brothers? They're not really in it that much, and they weren't really a threat. Is it Alec, the bartender? He was just doing his job.
You mean Alonzo?
Sorry. He was just doing his job, and Cell really is the reason. Is it the bathroom? Can I bench the bathroom? No.
Oh my gosh.
Can't. There's only one choice here.
And it's Selwyn Kane. He unraveled. He had a full-blown meltdown.
Temper tantrum, really.
Just really crashed out. That's what my sister's always talking about. I'm about to crash out. Like, it's her favorite, like, slang now, and I hear her say it all the time. And not that you can't, it works, like, especially in this situation. Cell crashed out.
Really did.
It was it was certainly something to behold.
Impressive, really.
Yeah. Because yikes.
But he'll get it together. Will he? We hope so.
Debatable.
Maybe. All right. Thank you guys for listening. Join us next week when we discuss chapters 34 through 36.
Wizard Team is part of the Black Nerds Create Collective. If you want to keep up with our content, you can check out our website at blacknerdscreate.com and follow us on Instagram and Tumblr at Wizard Team Pod and at Black Nerds Create. Also, I think we forgot to mention this at the beginning. If y'all missed our live stream last Saturday where we were celebrating the release of Amari and the Despicable Wonders, also with BB Austin as a special guest, you can check that out on BNC's YouTube channel. It's just youtube.com/@blacknerdscreate. And then you can watch that. It's fun.
Very fun. It was very fun. Yeah, we'll see you guys next week. I'm gonna go read Amari.
Same. Bye.
Bye.